Foes, a tale of treachery and retribution, where the line between friend and foe blurs into something altogether more dangerous. The air in the dimly lit tavern was thick with the scent of stale ale and whispered secrets. At a corner table, 3 figures huddled together, their voices low but their laughter sharp like the edge of a blade. There was Clara, a wiry woman with a scar tracing her jawline, her eyes glinting with malice. Beside her sat Torin, a broad-shouldered man whose booming voice could command a room, though tonight it was restrained to a conspiratorial murmur. And then there was Elias, slight, unassuming Elias, who leaned in closest, his fingers drumming the table as if keeping time to some silent, sinister rhythm. Across the room, their target sat alone, oblivious to the storm brewing in their direction. Rowan was a merchant of modest success, known for a sharp tongue and sharper ambition. They'd clawed their way up from nothing, building a small empire of trade routes and favors owed. But ambition breeds enemies, and Rowan had made more than their share. Clara despised them for undercutting her smuggling ring. Torin loathed them for outbidding him on a lucrative contract. Elias? His grudge was quieter, personal, a slight from years ago, a casual dismissal that had festered into something dark and unrelenting. Tonight, though, something new bound the trio together. Rowan's oldest friend, Maris. She slid into the seat beside Elias, her cloak hood pulled low, her smile tight and brittle. Maris had been Rowan's shadow since childhood, the one who'd stood by them through lean years and bitter fights. But loyalty, it seemed, had its limits. Rowan's latest venture, a risky deal that promised wealth beyond imagining, had excluded Maris entirely. They'd called her cautious, timid, unworthy of the gamble. The sting of it had driven her here, to this table, to these wolves. "They trust me," Maris said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They'll listen if I tell them it's safe." Clara smirked, leaning back in her chair. "And you're sure you're in?" "No second thoughts about your precious Rowan?" Maris's jaw tightened. "They made their choice. Now I'm making mine." Torin clapped a hand on her shoulder, nearly knocking her forward. "Good. Then let's drink to it. The fall of the mighty Rowan, brought low by their own greed and our hands." Elias raised his mug, his eyes gleaming. "To their downfall." The plan was simple, elegant in its cruelty. Rowan's big venture relied on a shipment of rare silks from across the sea, a fortune's worth if it landed safely. Maris would convince Rowan to store it in a warehouse Torin controlled, a place Clara's crew could easily raid. Elias, with his knack for forgery, would craft documents pinning the theft on Rowan themselves, a scandal that would ruin their reputation and leave their creditors baying for blood. Each step would tighten the noose, and Rowan, trusting Maris implicitly, would walk right into it. Over the next few weeks, the unlikely allies worked in tandem. Maris played her part flawlessly, feeding Rowan assurances and half-truths. "The warehouse is secure," she'd say, her voice steady even as her stomach churned. "Torin's a brute, but he's reliable." Rowan, preoccupied with their grand vision, barely questioned her. Clara's smugglers scouted the docks, timing the shipment's arrival. Torin greased palms to ensure no guards would interfere. Elias hunched over a desk in his cramped attic, perfecting the paper trail that would seal Rowan's fate. The night it all came together was cold and moonless. The shipment arrived as planned, and Rowan, beaming with pride, oversaw its transfer to the warehouse. Maris stood at their side, her expression unreadable. "You did it," she said softly, and Rowan clapped her on the back. "We did it," they corrected, oblivious to the venom behind her eyes. Hours later, Clara's crew struck. Silent as shadows, they emptied the warehouse. leaving nothing but echoes and a few artfully planted papers. By morning, the city buzzed with the news. Rowan's shipment was gone, and whispers of embezzlement spread like wildfire. Creditors descended, allies abandoned them, and the forged documents, discovered by chance, painted Rowan as a fraud who'd orchestrated the theft to line their own pockets. Rowan fought to clear their name, but the evidence was ironclad, the betrayal complete. Maris vanished from their side, claiming illness, while Clara, Torrin, and Elias watched from afar, their victory sweetened by the sight of Rowan's unraveling. They met again in the tavern, raising their mugs once more, this time joined by Maris, whose hands no longer trembled. "To enemies united," Torrin roared, and the others echoed him, their laughter drowning out the distant sound of Rowan's world collapsing. In the end, Rowan was left with nothing, no wealth, no friends, no hope, trapped in a web spun by those they'd wronged and the one they'd trusted most. And somewhere in the shadows, 4 conspirators toasted to a downfall well-earned, their alliance forged in spite and sealed in triumph. This has been a Sharri Plaza presentation.